When Donald Trump stood at the podium and declared, "I will impose global tariffs," it wasn't just a domestic policy shift, it was a global earthquake. Within hours, world leaders were scrambling. Europe stiffened its spine. China bristled. Canada quietly re-evaluated its long-standing trade loyalty. But underneath the loud political showmanship, a serious question emerged. Is this Trump's boldest move yet, or the beginning of an economic unraveling? At first, the European Union resisted. Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Commission, called for global defiance against Trump's tariff plan. She warned that a new wave of protectionism could push the global economy to the edge. In her words, "We're finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel, and we're now preparing for further measures to protect our interests and our businesses." China, however, chose a different path. Trump's demand was blunt: remove the 34% retaliatory tariffs, or face even steeper ones. Beijing's answer was blunt too: no. Instead of backing down, China doubled down. It imposed an additional 34% tariff, restricted the export of rare earth materials, and placed fresh bans on around 30 U.S. organizations, many in defense and tech. These were not empty gestures. They were targeted strikes on industries vital to America's global influence. The tariff battle quickly escalated into a high-stakes slugfest, with both superpowers trading economic punches. Trump threatened to hike tariffs to 50% or even 104%. The rhetoric sounded like a boxing match between two heavyweight champions, but the fallout was real. Analysts warned that this kind of escalation could send shockwaves through the global economy. Then, quietly but decisively, Canada stepped into the arena. No longer content with playing middleman between US and global trade tensions, Canada began exploring new deals with Europe and India. We could actually redirect those purchases somewhere else. That would solve our trade deficit. This wasn't an idle threat. Canada currently supplies about 4 million barrels of oil per day to the US, with 700,000 of those heading straight to the Gulf Coast. If that supply were rerouted to Europe, the US could face a serious energy shortage. Gas stations in New England, for instance, might see price hikes of 20 to 40 cents per gallon. And replacing Canadian oil isn't as easy as flipping a switch. US refineries are calibrated to process Canada's heavy crude. Losing that input would force costly retooling. The automotive and tech sectors are already feeling the pinch. American manufacturers, from BMW and Audi's US divisions to homegrown automakers, are raising red flags. The cost of imported parts is skyrocketing. Factories are slowing down. Some are considering layoffs. US workers, especially in industrial states, are absorbing the blow. Meanwhile, Silicon Valley companies are losing ground. China, once a major market, is closing its doors. Export restrictions, retaliatory bans, and shifting alliances are costing US tech firms millions. Long-standing partnerships are fracturing under pressure. At the heart of it all is a single question. Does Trump understand the long-term impact of his tariff strategy? According to a recent survey, 62% of workers in industrial states say they're directly affected by the tariffs. Farmers are worried too. Many have already lost access to critical export markets. One farmer put it bluntly, "I hope it ends soon. We just want to be good partners with the countries around the world, to be able to sit down at the table again." But that table is looking emptier by the day. Back in Canada, Danielle Smith isn't mincing words. She's pushing to diversify Canada's energy relationships, accelerate LNG development, and frame every trade decision within the lens of both energy security and climate crisis. Her message is sharp. If the US wants to play hardball, Canada is ready to pivot, and fast. In March 2025 alone, Canada exported 8 million barrels of oil to the EU, double the previous quarter. The EU, scrambling after its painful break from Russian energy, is more than happy to welcome a new supplier. Suddenly, Canada, once seen as America's quiet neighbor, is becoming a central player in the global energy game. And it's not just oil. Canada is rich in uranium, essential for nuclear power, and rare earth minerals, critical for electric vehicles. It also provides clean electricity to the US, over 11,000 gigawatt hours annually. If Canada pulls back, the US will have to look to far more complicated and less reliable sources like Venezuela or the Middle East. It's a logistical nightmare waiting to unfold. The trade conflict is spreading. Trump reinstated tariffs on steel, dairy, and cars. Canada responded by threatening ethanol, a major US export that fuels clean energy programs. If Canada pulls back from buying American ethanol, states like Iowa could see economic disaster. And just when it seemed the economic chaos was enough, a diplomatic mess added fuel to the fire. White House spokesperson Caroline Leavitt found herself under fire after a comment directed at a French politician who had called for the U.S. to return the Statue of Liberty. It's only because of the United States that the French aren't speaking German today. Social media exploded. Historians quickly reminded the internet that France helped the U.S. win its independence. Memes followed. The moment was embarrassing, but it also exposed a deeper problem. A communications team seemingly unprepared for the scale of global fallout that these tariff moves have created. By the time the laughter subsided, the consequences remained. Trump's economic plan has become a paradox. It promises American strength, but risks weakening key alliances. It demands loyalty from trading partners, but drives them away. It aims to boost domestic jobs, yet threatens to dismantle entire industries if the rest of the world pushes back too hard. As the global landscape reshapes itself in response, one thing is clear. This isn't just a trade war anymore. It's a complete redrawing of global power lines, with energy, technology, and diplomacy all hanging in the balance. As Trump's tariff policies gain momentum, the pressure is intensifying, not just abroad, but here at home. America's economic machinery is starting to grind against itself, and the people who built it, the workers, the farmers, the middle class, are the ones feeling the heat. In the quiet farmlands of the Midwest, patience is running thin. Soybean farmers, already battered by years of unstable markets, now face new trade restrictions from China, one of their biggest buyers. Prices are dropping, and so is hope. The machinery is still running, but the profits are vanishing. One farmer in Iowa summed it up plainly. We're not just losing money, we're losing our way of life. Meanwhile, U.S. automakers are starting to panic. The tariffs on steel and aluminum, key materials for car production, have raised manufacturing costs across the board. Even companies that usually stay out of politics are speaking up. Ford, General Motors, and Tesla have all quietly lobbied against the tariffs. They know what's coming: layoffs, plant closures, and shrinking international sales. We've survived recessions, we've survived foreign competition, but this is different. We're being sabotaged from within. When Japan was hit with a fresh 25% tariff on automobile exports to the US, it responded not with restraint, but with resolve. Japanese officials didn't hide their frustration. If the US harms us, we will retaliate accordingly. This wasn't mere diplomacy, it was a warning. Japan has been one of America's strongest allies for decades, both economically and militarily. It is also the largest direct investor in the US, employing over 1 million Americans, many of them in the Midwest, the very region Trump claims to protect. But now, Japan is rethinking everything. The trade blow was just the beginning. Tokyo has announced plans to deepen ties with the EU and Canada. It's openly exploring new economic alliances, and more importantly, it's ramping up defense spending. That's not a coincidence. Japan is preparing for a future where its strategic dependence on the US is no longer guaranteed. This is where things get complicated and dangerous. The US defense industry, already on edge from trade uncertainty, now faces the risk of losing one of its biggest international clients. If Japan turns to Europe for military hardware, favoring contracts with France, Germany, or Sweden, companies like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon could lose billions. It's not just a matter of money, it's about influence. Inside the White House, things aren't much clearer. Less than 24 hours before Trump's last major policy speech, insiders revealed that no final decision had been made. Advisors were still scrambling, debating between global tariffs, reciprocal tax models, or bloc-specific tariffs targeting regions like the EU or South America. The problem? You can't negotiate with the entire world at once, especially not when your policies are already burning bridges in every direction. Economists are issuing warnings with increasing urgency. Goldman Sachs raised its probability for a U.S. recession to 35%. Moody's Analytics projected a possible 5.5 million job loss scenario if global retaliation kicks in. Unemployment could surge past 7%, and GDP growth would plunge. Wall Street is reacting. The S&P 500 just had its worst quarter since 2022. Investors are pulling back, uncertain how to predict the next move from a White House that operates more like a casino than a central command. The chaos is also starting to spill over into public discourse, and late-night television isn't holding back. Comedian Jamie Foxx made headlines with his eerily accurate impression of Trump. It wasn't just funny, it was biting. The voice, the posture, the nonsense catchphrases. All of it landed so well that even Fox's critics admitted it felt more real than the man himself. Social media lit up, YouTube exploded, Twitter melted down. Trump responded in the only way he knows how, with a late-night tweet storm. He called Fox a low-energy actor, misspelled his name and blamed the media for turning comedy into what he described as a conspiracy to undermine national stability. Meanwhile, the official White House press office wasn't doing much better. Caroline Leavitt, the new press secretary, made headlines of her own after suggesting that France should be grateful to the US for not speaking German today, an awkward response to a French lawmaker's comment about returning the Statue of Liberty. She seemed to forget France helped the US win its independence in the first place. It got worse. Leavitt then questioned the legal authority of judges to block presidential actions, claiming it was completely unconstitutional, a statement that displayed a stunning misunderstanding of the US Constitution. Legal analysts, historians, and social media fact-checkers had a field day. This kind of clumsy diplomacy might seem like a sideshow, but in times of global tension, every word from the White House carries weight. Allies are watching, so are enemies. And when the face of American leadership starts making public mistakes that go viral for all the wrong reasons, confidence, both domestic and international, takes a hit. Back to the bigger picture. Trump's plan to impose a universal 20% tariff on all imported goods is still on the table. If implemented, it would affect more than $3 trillion worth of goods and commodities. That's unprecedented in scale. And with scale comes risk. According to internal estimates, such a move could generate up to $6 trillion in additional revenue over the next decade. But only in an ideal world where retaliation doesn't exist. Economists agree, that scenario isn't just unlikely, it's impossible. Because when you push the entire world into a corner, they don't just back down, they push back. Canada is no longer just considering options, it's executing them. Prime Minister Mark Carney has become a leading voice of resistance. He's calling for a complete restructuring of Canada's economy to reduce reliance on US markets. He's warned that without action, more Canadians will be left behind. His message is gaining traction not just in Canada, but in Europe and Asia too. All of this adds up to one brutal truth. Trump's economic war is backfiring, fast. And yet for many of his supporters, this still feels like strength. Standing up to the world, they argue, is what America should have done long ago. But that mindset comes with a cost, and now the bill is coming due.